On the West Tower here, they're basically preparing for the new stone.
This is an exciting time for the Shrine of St. Joseph. The process of renovating the two towers is underway. Actually, the completion of the towers is the final stage of a restoration that has spanned 3 decades. Today, this church, located just north of downtown St. Louis on 11th and Biddle Streets, is in impeccable condition. But just 30 years ago, it looked nothing like this.
It was essentially painted in steamboat colors, a baby blue, kind of a pinkish red, a lot of white.
I have to tell you, when I first came here with my wife and I saw the condition it was in, I said, and I knew they were trying to save it, I said, why did they want to save this? It was so run down looking, so unseemly looking, that I just couldn't believe my eyes.
By the 1970s, the plaster was cracking, windows were broken, the roof was porous, and the handcrafted altars and statues were covered in spray paint. And to make matters worse, for this century-and-a-half-old church, it sat in the path of a proposed truck depot. But despite these flaws, there was one priest who saw its beauty, and his affection for it spread.
I walked through the door with Father Filipiak, and this man suddenly almost glowed. I mean, he completely changed, and he looked at the room, and all he said was, "Isn't it beautiful?" And I've been here ever since.
In the late 1970s, a group of St. Louisans formed a non-profit group, Friends of the Shrine of St. Joseph, in an effort to save the church and return it to its original glory, which lay deep beneath the surface. It would take a miracle, but miracles have happened.
Accommodating the large number of German immigrants was the force behind the Jesuits building St. Joseph in 1844. It was only the 6th Catholic church established in St. Louis, and it's the only church in the city where a documented miracle has occurred. In the early 1860s, a German immigrant named Ignatius Stricker was dying from cancer and tuberculosis.
Just at that time, a Jesuit missionary came in here to give a mission, and after the mission, he said he'd like those who were ill or sick or injured to stay, and he would give them a special blessing with a relic of Blessed Peter Claver, the relic being a bone chip of Peter Claver. Well, the wife of the man who was dying was here, and she heard this. She went home and implored her husband to come back over here to the church to get the special blessing with the relic. He agreed to do that, and his children and some of his neighbors carried him over here on his stretcher, where he kissed the relic. Got up off the stretcher, he walked back home. A few days later, he went back to work in the soap factory, and he lived for another 16 years when the doctor said he'd die within a few weeks. That has been authenticated as a true miracle by the Vatican, and is one of the 2 miracles that made Blessed Peter Claver St. Peter Claver.
At one time, this was the largest Catholic church in St. Louis, seating 1,200 people in multiple masses every Sunday. But over time, the neighborhood suffered. Parishioners moved away, until all that was left was a few churchgoers and a devoted priest.
He had a compelling love for this church that took it through the darkest days, and caused people who came into contact with him to be hooked.
Actually, Father Filipiak wouldn't see the darkest days at St. Joseph, but it was his love for the church that would see them through it. In the fall of 1979, 72-year-old Father Filipiak was brutally murdered in the church rectory. This senseless act of violence further ignited the fire to save this church.
When Father was killed, that immediately was front page news, and it galvanized a much larger community to support.
I guess it could have gone either way.
It could have
they
gone,
said, okay, well, there was a priest who was slain there, let's just get rid of it.
It certainly could have gone the other way.
But it didn't, and restoration continued. But you must understand, we're talking about a large, broken-down church where there was nothing in it that didn't need repair, and Friends of the Shrine would settle for nothing less than an original restoration.
We've not attempted anything until we could thoroughly research it. We've had the luxury of being able to test and test and test until we got the original colors and the original designs. And then we've been blessed with craftsmen who could actually recreate them.
They researched through any means possible. Because photographs are rare and color photos are non-existing, investigating the original colors and designs in the church was mostly done in the field.
For instance, on the borders of the windows, where the original paint was a very fragile casein paint, it took many, many, many tries to document what was there, because once we would get through all the coats of newer paints down to this very fragile original fabric, we knew we had maybe 30 seconds of life before it disappeared, because the chemicals that got us there worked on that fragile paint.
Right. Well, I got all.
It's all covered on. It's covered on the drawings.
I haven't really.
And that's why this restoration project has taken 30 years. The Shrine of St. Joseph is run by volunteers and isn't even a parish. But almost 200 people attend Mass here every Sunday.
We've never known great prosperity. We've survived on, basically, for most of the time, extremely small gifts from a lot of people who cared. And little by little, things have happened. And we have not done things until we could pay for them.
And this hasn't been cheap.
They were a $5,000 item.
Each pane?
Each panel.
So let's say like that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, $35,000 just for that section?
Yeah. Everything comes in big numbers here because it's a big space.
Over the last 3 decades, Friends of the Shrine have raised and spent millions of dollars restoring and maintaining this church. You could call it a miracle. It's certainly more than Father Filipiak ever could have dreamed.
If we hadn't thought that it was possible, I don't think we would have done it. But we were a bunch of cockeyed optimists, and we felt that there was something about the church that justified the effort. And so we gave it the best that we could and just said, you know, what will be, will be.